Don't look for the enemy far away. The dagger is as close as your breath.
My husband didn't steal from me in a dramatic way. There was no screaming match, no suspicious late-night calls, no lipstick on collars. He stole from me with paperwork, with polite smiles, with "don't worry about it, babe," and "it's just easier this way." And the worst part? I signed things without realizing I was signing my future away. My name is Clara Whitfield, and for the first year of my marriage, I truly believed I was safe. James was the kind of man people called reliable. He paid bills on time. He held doors open. He called his mother every Sunday. He didn't flirt with other women. He didn't drink too much. He didn't lose his temper. He was good. But I learned something later. Good men don't always love you. Sometimes they just know how to look good while they manage you. We met at a friend's engagement party. He was charming in a quiet way, steady eye contact, calm voice, a reassuring presence. He asked questions like he actually cared about the answers. When I talked about my job, he listened instead of competing. 2 months in, he started bringing me coffee to work. 6 months in, he was talking about marriage. By the time he proposed, my friends were saying things like, "Finally, a man who isn't a problem." I laughed with them because I believed it too. The wedding was small but elegant. His mother, Diane Whitfield, cried during the vows. She held my hands afterward and said, "Welcome, Clara. We're so happy to have you." She was warm, polished, and effortlessly respected. She had that classic, well-maintained beauty blonde hair, pearl earrings, perfect posture. She spoke with the calm authority of someone used to being listened to. Everyone loved Diane, which meant if I ever complained, I would sound ungrateful. After the wedding, James suggested we buy a house. "We'll build something real," he said, touching my cheek like it was romantic. "Something permanent." I had savings. He had savings. We both worked. The idea made sense. I imagined us choosing paint colors, arguing playfully over furniture, hosting dinners, starting a life that belonged to us. So when he said, "I want to handle the paperwork," I didn't question it. He worked in finance. He understood loans. He spoke confidently about interest rates and down payments and the smartest way to structure things. I trusted him. The first time my stomach tightened was at the bank. The loan officer smiled too much. James shook his hand like they were old friends. The papers came in a thick stack. The loan officer slid them toward James, not me. James flipped through quickly, pointing to places for me to sign. "This is standard," he said. "This is just confirming you've seen it. This is just acknowledging you're married. Just. I signed. I didn't read. Because I didn't want to look suspicious. I didn't want to be the kind of wife who doesn't trust her husband. Diane was there too, sitting beside James like she belonged in the transaction. "Clara, sweetheart," she said softly, "this is all for your protection." Protection. That word is a trap when a woman says it about your life. We got the house. It was beautiful, 2 stories, white kitchen, big backyard, a quiet neighborhood with families and manicured lawns. Everyone congratulated us. Diane brought a housewarming gift, a framed sign that said "Home is where family is." She insisted it go in the entryway. James agreed immediately. I smiled and hung it up. A week later, we bought a car. Or I thought we did. James said it would be easier if it was in one name for insurance purposes. He said it like he was doing me a favor. "It doesn't matter whose name it's in," he told me, kissing my forehead. "It's ours." He used ours the way some people use lullabies, softly, repeatedly, until you stop questioning. I didn't notice the pattern until it was everywhere. My credit card statement stopped coming to our mailbox. James said, I switched it to paperless. Less clutter. The utility bills were under his login. The company only allows one account holder. It's fine. Our joint savings account became his investment account. It's better this way. Trust me. And every time I hesitated, Diane would appear like a calm shadow behind him. She'd call and say, James told me you're stressed. You know men carry a lot. Don't make home another burden. Burden. That word was always waiting for me. So I stayed quiet. I worked. I cooked. I kept the house clean. I smiled at family dinners. I played the role of the lucky woman who married a stable man. Then, one random Tuesday afternoon, a letter arrived in the mail addressed to Diane. Not to James. Not to me. To Diane Whitfield. At my house. I didn't open it at first. I just stared at it, confused. Why would his mother get mail here? Maybe she had her address saved from when she helped with the mortgage paperwork. That's what I told myself. But the envelope had an official seal. My stomach tightened again. I opened it. It was a property tax notice, for my house. But the owner listed on the document was not me. It wasn't James either. It was Diane Whitfield. My hands went cold. I read it again slowly, as if my eyes were misbehaving. Owner, Diane Whitfield. I felt like the floor shifted under my feet. I grabbed my phone and called James immediately. He answered on the third ring, cheerful. Hey babe, what's up? I held the paper so tightly it crinkled. Why is your mother listed as the owner of our house? Silence. Not long, but long enough. Then he laughed lightly. Oh, that. Don't freak out. Don't freak out. That phrase is never said by someone who's innocent. It's a temporary thing, he continued quickly. It was just easier for the loan approval. You know how strict banks are. Mom has a longer credit history. My throat tightened. So my house is in your mother's name. It's still our house, he said, voice smoothing out, calmer now. It's just on paper, just on paper. I looked around my kitchen, the marble counter, the fresh flowers Diane had chosen, the entryway sign that still hung like a joke. Just on paper was suddenly everything. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. James sighed like I was exhausting him. Because you would have overthought it. Clara, you get anxious. We've talked about that. I froze. There it was, the first taste of gaslighting. Not blatant, not cruel, just enough to make me question my reaction. I'm not anxious, I said carefully. I'm asking a normal question. James lowered his voice like he was comforting a child. Babe, trust me, Mom is family. She would never do anything to hurt us. Us. He always used us when he meant me. I swallowed hard. Can you send me the deed? Another pause. Then, why do you need it? I just want to see it. Clara, he said, warning in his tone now. Don't start this. Start this, like I was the one creating a problem. I forced my voice to stay steady. It already started. I just found out, James exhaled. I'm in a meeting. We'll talk later. He hung up. I stared at my phone screen for a long moment, heartbeat loud in my ears. Then my eyes drifted to the kitchen drawer where we kept important documents, passports, insurance cards, warranty papers. I pulled it open, no deed, no mortgage documents, no closing papers. Just empty space where my security should have been. My throat burned, not with tears, with rage. I sat down at the table and tried to breathe. Because this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a system. A system built to keep me comfortable while I was being quietly erased. My phone buzzed. A message from Diane. Clara, sweetheart, James mentioned you seemed upset. Don't worry. Everything is handled. Handled. By who, not me. I stared at her message, then looked at the property tax notice again. Something clicked. If the house was in Diane's name, if the car was in James's name, if the money was in James's account, then what exactly did I own? I opened my laptop and typed my address into the county property records search. My hands were steady now. This wasn't panic. This was clarity. The record loaded. Owner, Diane Whitfield. Purchase date, 6 months ago. There it was in black and white. I felt my stomach drop again, but I didn't collapse. I didn't cry. I didn't call my friends. I did something different. I started documenting. I opened a new folder on my laptop. I named it Paper Trail. Then I made another folder inside it. Exit plan. I sat there in the quiet kitchen of a house that wasn't mine, and I wrote one sentence in my notes app. If they can put everything in her name, I can put the truth in mine. When James came home that night, he acted normal. He kissed my cheek like nothing happened. He asked what was for dinner. He joked about work. He even smiled when he saw the flowers on the counter. I smiled back. Because if James thought I was starting something, he had no idea what I was about to finish. And in the entryway, under that stupid sign Diane made me hang, I hung my coat calmly and walked into the kitchen like a woman who still believed she belonged here. But I didn't belong. Not to the house. Not to the Whitfields. Not to the version of myself that signed papers without reading. That version was gone. And the new one had already started writing her way out. I didn't confront James that night. I cooked dinner. I asked about his meeting. I laughed at the right moments. I played the version of myself he expected. The trusting wife, the calm presence, the woman who didn't start things. Inside, I was cataloging. Every word, every pause, every habit. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Not because I was weak. Because I needed time. Time to understand exactly how much of my life had been quietly transferred out of my hands. I started with the bank. I walked into the branch where we'd opened our joint account, smiled politely, and asked for a full statement history. The teller typed for a moment, then frowned. "This account is under James Whitfield only," she said. I blinked. "I'm listed as his spouse." "Yes," she replied, still polite. "But not as an account holder." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "So I can't see the statements?" She shook her head. "I'm sorry." I thanked her and walked out without arguing. Arguing would have made me emotional. Emotion would have made me loud. Loud would have made me careless. At home, I pulled my credit report. That's when things got interesting. There were accounts I didn't recognize. Small loans, recently opened, all paid on time. All under my name. But the addresses didn't match where we lived. My pulse stayed steady as I clicked deeper. James hadn't just moved assets away from me. He'd anchored liabilities to me. Carefully, slowly, legally. I took screenshots. I downloaded reports. I saved everything in the paper trail folder. By noon, I knew more about my marriage than I had in 2 years. By evening, Diane called. "I heard you were upset yesterday," she said gently. "I was surprised," I replied. There was a pause. Then her voice softened further. "Marriage can be overwhelming at first. James carries the stress so you don't have to. So you don't have to." I imagined her saying that to herself while signing documents with my future on them. "I appreciate concern," I said. "But I'd like transparency." Diane sighed. "Clara, sweet girl, you married into a family that plans ahead. You should feel grateful." Grateful. That word again. I smiled even though she couldn't see me. "I do. That's why I'm educating myself." Another pause. Shorter this time. "That's good," she said, not sounding like she meant it. After the call, I opened James's laptop while he was in the shower. I didn't rush. I didn't snoop wildly. I searched methodically. Emails, attachments, PDFs,
I found a folder labeled estate planning. Inside were documents dated months before our wedding.
Diane's name everywhere. Properties, accounts, contingencies. And one email from James to his mother that made my stomach flip, not from pain, but from clarity. I handled it. She signed everything. She didn't ask questions. No malice. No cruelty. Just confidence. I closed the laptop and sat on the bed, breathing slowly. James came out of the bathroom, towel around his waist, smiling. "You okay?" he asked. "Yes," I said. And for the first time it was true. Because now I knew something important. James didn't think he was doing anything wrong. He thought he was being smart, which meant he wouldn't see what was coming. Over the next 2 weeks, I became observant. I noticed how often Diane stopped by, accidentally, how James checked with her before making decisions that involved me, how he used words like we agreed when I had never agreed. I also noticed something else. They underestimated me. So I let them. I asked Diane for advice about refinancing. I asked James to explain investment basics to me. I let them believe I was finally learning my place, and while they relaxed, I worked. I opened a private bank account in my own name. I rerouted my paycheck. I consulted a lawyer quietly, professionally, without drama. She reviewed my documents, my screenshots, my timeline. "This was intentional," she said calmly. "But not airtight." I raised an eyebrow. "Meaning?" "Meaning they assumed you'd never look." I smiled for the first time in days. That night, James suggested dinner at his mother's. I agreed. At the table, Diane talked about family legacy and security. James nodded. I ate slowly and listened. Then Diane said something she'd never said before. "We should update the will soon," she said casually. Just in case. Just in case." I met her eyes and smiled. "I agree," I said. "Clarity is important." James looked relieved. Diane looked satisfied. Neither of them realized that clarity was exactly what I was building. That night, back in our bedroom, James fell asleep quickly. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling of a house that still wasn't mine. But it would be. Not because I wanted it. Because I was about to prove something they never considered. You can't quietly erase a woman who's paying attention. And once she starts documenting, there's no sunning your way out. I didn't rush the ending. That was the first thing I learned once I stopped panicking. If you act too fast, people like James and Diane don't lose. They pivot. They rewrite. They turn your reaction into evidence that you're unstable, irrational, too emotional to understand finance. So I became boring. I became agreeable. I became the version of myself they wanted. For long enough to build my exit like a contract. For the next 10 days, I acted exactly as if that property tax notice had never arrived. I made dinner. I asked about James's meetings. I laughed at his jokes. When Diane called, I answered sweetly. When she dropped by with leftovers, I thanked her warmly and offered tea. Inside, I was counting. Timing. Patterns. Weak points. James didn't notice because he didn't look for change unless it inconvenienced him. Diane didn't notice because she assumed control was permanent. To them, my cooperation was proof that their system worked. That system had a heartbeat. Secrecy. So I made secrecy my tool. The first thing I did was lock down my identity. I froze my credit with all 3 bureaus. I placed fraud alerts. I requested full reports and downloaded everything. The accounts I didn't recognize were small, but intentional. A personal line of credit, a store card, a loan under a slightly different mailing address. Nothing that screamed crime. Everything that whispered confusion. Confusion was their favorite weapon. I uploaded the reports into my paper trail folder and labeled each file with the date. I took screenshots of every account page. I kept a written timeline in a notebook I hid inside an old winter boot in my closet because I no longer trusted drawers. Then I opened a new bank account in my own name at a different branch across town, not the one James used. I did it on my lunch break, wearing a smile that made me look harmless. I redirected my paycheck immediately. I changed my direct deposit the same afternoon.
It felt strange, like breathing without asking permission. That night, James came home and kissed me like he always did.
"I'm thinking we should start budgeting better," he said casually. "Mom mentioned inflation is getting bad." I smiled. "That makes sense." He relaxed. He didn't know my paycheck would land elsewhere in 48 hours. The second thing I did was confirm ownership. I already had the county property record showing Diane's name, but I needed more. I needed proof of intent, something beyond maybe she helped with the mortgage. So I requested public records, the deed transfer history, the mortgage registration, the closing signatures if available. I printed everything. I also called the title company listed on the paperwork and asked for the closing packet. The woman on the phone was polite until she heard my name. Then she hesitated. "Clara Whitfield," she repeated. "You were present at closing?" "Yes," I said calmly. "I'm requesting the packet from my own records." Another pause. "I can email it to the listed owner," she said finally. "And who is the listed owner?" I asked, already knowing. "Diane Whitfield." I swallowed the anger rising in my throat and kept my voice pleasant. "Great, then I'll have my attorney request it formally." "Thank you so much." The word attorney changed her tone instantly. People get very honest when they hear legal nouns. That night, I went home and waited for James to fall asleep. Then I opened his laptop. I wasn't frantic. I wasn't snooping like a guilty teenager. I moved like an investigator. His password was Diane's birthday. Of course it was. I searched email for deed, closing, title, mortgage, trust, Diane, Mom, and Clara anxious. The results came up like a confession. There it was, months before our wedding, an email chain between James and Diane. "We should do it. Before she's legally tied to you. Less complicated. She won't push back. She trusts you. Make sure she signs quickly. Don't overwhelm her with details." My hands went cold. It wasn't family planning. It was strategy. I saved it, printed it, took photos of the screen with my phone because I'd learned that digital proof can disappear when the person controlling the passwords gets nervous. I kept reading. Another email. "If anything happens, you're protected, sweetheart. Houses in your name. Savings in your account. She can't take what she doesn't own." My breath caught. Another. "Clara is sweet, but she's not strong. Don't give her too much control. Women get ideas. Women get ideas." I stared at that line for a long time. Then I closed the laptop and sat on the edge of the bed in the dark, listening to James breathe like an innocent man. I wasn't crying. I was calculating. Because now I understood the full picture. James hadn't married me to build a future with me. He married me to fund a future that didn't include my voice. The third thing I did was meet a lawyer. Not a dramatic, expensive corporate attorney in a skyscraper. A calm, sharp woman named Maren Klein who specialized in family financial disputes. I met her in a small office with soft lighting and no judgment. She didn't gasp at my documents. She didn't pity me. She did what I needed most. She took me seriously. "This isn't an accident," she said, after reading the emails. "It's not even sloppy. It's deliberate. Can I fix it?" I asked. Maren's eyes held mine. "You can correct the narrative, yes, but it will take patience. Do not tip them off." I smiled tightly. "I won't." She outlined steps. Preserve evidence. Avoid direct confrontation until filings were ready. Document any financial coercion. And most importantly, protect my safety. "Is he violent?" she asked. I thought of James's calm face.
his gentle hand on my back, his quiet voice saying, "Don't freak out."
"No," I said slowly. "He's administrative." Marin nodded. Administrative men are dangerous in a different way. On my way home, I sat in my car for 10 minutes before going inside.
I stared at my house, the house that wasn't mine, and let myself feel a single, sharp truth. I had been living in someone else's asset, and I had smiled while doing it. When I walked in, Diane was there. Of course she was. She stood in my kitchen holding a casserole dish like she owned the counter. "Clara!" she chirped. "I made something light." "James said you've been stressed." James sat at the table, relaxed, watching me like I was a weather forecast. I set my purse down calmly.
"That's thoughtful."
Diane tilted her head. "Have you been sleeping?"
"Fine," I said. She stepped closer, voice dropping into that warm, private tone she used when she wanted to plant an idea.
"Sweetheart, you know James only wants what's best. But when you question things, it makes him anxious." There it was again. My questions framed as harm to him. I smiled. "I don't want him anxious." Diane's eyes softened, satisfied.
"Good girl." The words were barely audible, but I heard them. James didn't react. Either he didn't hear, or he didn't think it mattered. Something inside me hardened. I nodded like she'd said something kind. "I'll be more mindful." That night in bed, James ran his fingers through my hair and said,
"Mom thinks you're coming around."
I stared at the ceiling.
"Am I?"
He laughed quietly. "Yeah, this is what I wanted. Peace." Their definition of peace was my silence. Mine would be different. The next phase was psychological. I needed James to reveal more, something that would make a judge see intention without me looking vindictive. So I asked questions the way Diane taught him to answer, softly, innocently, almost admiring.
"What do you think is the smartest way for us to handle our finances long term?" I asked one night, curling into him.
James smiled, proud. "It's complicated, babe. But I've got it." "Should I worry that nothing is in my name?" I asked, letting the words sound anxious, not accusatory. He kissed my forehead. "You don't need your name on things. We're married."
"But what if something happened to you?"
I whispered. He hesitated. Just a beat. Then he said, "Then Mom would make sure you're taken care of." Taken care of. By Diane, not by me. I nodded like that was comforting. That's reassuring. And James, believing he had soothed me, relaxed enough to say the truth out loud. "I just didn't want you overwhelmed," he added. "You can be intense about security. It's better when one person handles it. One person. Not us." I saved that conversation in my memory like a file. Then I did the thing that ended it. I scheduled a family financial planning meeting at Diana's house and told James it would make me feel safer. He loved the idea. Diane loved it more. Diane even invited her brother, an older man with a confident smile who knew real estate. They sat me at the table like a student. Diane began with warmth. "We're all here because we care." James squeezed my hand.
"See? This is support." I opened my folder and placed it on the table gently.
"Before we plan," I said calmly, "I want clarity on what we already did." Diane's smile flickered. "Of course." I slid the property tax notice forward first, then the county record, then the email printouts.
The air changed.
James's face drained of color as he read his own words on paper. Diane's expression tightened, not into panic, into control. "Clara, where did you get private emails?" "I'm your daughter-in-law," I said softly. "You made me family, remember?" James looked at his mother, confused. "Mom, what is this?" Diane lifted her chin. "This is Clara spiraling. She's misinterpreting things." Marin's voice echoed in my head. "They'll call you unstable. Be calm." So I stayed calm. I'm not spiraling, I said. I'm documenting. I turned to James. Is this your email? I tapped the page where he wrote. She won't push back. She trusts you. James's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. Diane cut in quickly. He meant you trusted him. Which is healthy. I nodded. And this one? I slid another page. She can't take what she doesn't own. Silence. James's hand slipped from mine. His eyes darted to Diane like a child caught cheating. For the first time in our marriage, he looked afraid. Not of me, of disappointing her. That was the moment I knew. I wasn't married to a man. I was married to a bond I could never compete with. I didn't beg him to choose me. I didn't give a speech. I simply placed one last document on the table. My attorney's letter. I'm filing, I said quietly. James stared. Clara, please. We can fix this. Diane's voice sharpened. You're making a mistake. You'll lose everything. I smiled slightly. No, I'm finally seeing everything. I stood, picked up my bag, and looked at James one final time. I loved you, I said. But you didn't build a life with me. You built a system around me. Then I walked out. The divorce didn't explode. It unraveled the way careful lies do when exposed to daylight. My lawyer submitted evidence of financial coercion and identity misuse. The disputed accounts were investigated. The credit freezes held. Diane's ownership of my home became an issue once a judge saw the email timelines and my signatures obtained under deception. It didn't happen overnight, but it happened. James tried to call, then text, then beg. Diane tried a different tactic: sweet apologies, then cold threats, then silence. I didn't respond. Because once you see how a person controls you, you stop feeling confused by their tone changes. Months later, I signed papers again. This time I read every line. My name was on what belonged to me. Not because I fought loudly, but because I fought correctly. And on the day I moved into a small apartment I chose myself, I hung nothing in the entryway except a simple mirror. Not a family quote, not a reminder to be grateful. A mirror so I would never again forget who I was responsible for, me,